social media is hot. Visual social media is the hot of hot. And today, we're going to be talking about Instagram and Pinterest with two brands that are using those two tools very effectively. Hi, I'm Daniel Burstein, Director of Editorial Content at Marketing Sherpa. We're at the Marketing Sherpa Media Center at IRCE, where 10,000 e-commerce marketers are joining us. And the two that are joining us on the couch right now are Amy Schwartz, Digital Marketing Manager for King Arthur Flour. Amy, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We also have Jason Miles, the CEO of Liberty Jane Clothing.
Hello, thank you.
So let's start by talking about visual social media. How do you use visual social media differently than you would say like a Twitter or a Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, the basic idea is that I think the research shows that even on Facebook, pictures get more engagement than normal posts. And everybody kind of intuitively knows that, but it's statistically true. And so the topic really that we've kind of presented today is all about how you can leverage that even further with Instagram and Pinterest, and really start to focus on visual media as a focus for your work as a marketing practitioner.
Yeah, and Jason, I know you've written a few books on the topic, but
yep.
You also have your own e-commerce company, and so let's take a look at how you're using Instagram for your e-commerce company. So this is a look at your Instagram account. Tell us, what's your overall strategy here?
Yeah, so when we went into Instagram, we had been on Pinterest. Pinterest was working great for us, and a little bit of the backstory. I was talking to a small business guy about Pinterest, and he said, I'm getting a lot better results on Instagram. And I was like, whoa. So I started to look into it. We started to launch our strategy. And basically what we try to do is a behind-the-scenes view of our company. You can see from the image shot, my wife is a designer. We design doll clothes. It's a funny little niche. And we run an e-commerce site, pixiefair.com, that is a digital publishing kind of platform or marketplace for the doll clothes patterns. So with Instagram, we wanted to do a behind-the-scenes look at her work. She'll weave in kind of the journey of creation, as a designer. So she'll take pictures at the mall, say, hey, I'm going to make this spring. She'll take pictures of, at a huge fabric store in New York or San Francisco, the behind-the-scenes stuff. And then the primary strategy we're using it for is product launch. We have a very specific launch cycle for the stuff we make, and Instagram works great for that kind of build up and telling about the behind the scenes of the product, and then when it's ready to go, it's kind of announced in some ways on Instagram, and people keep track that way. So that's kind of how we use it.
That's great. You're really showing the behind-the-scenes story. I'm sure a lot of customers don't know all the work that goes into making the doll clothes. So probably there's a lot more value when it actually comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And by the way, that must be every little girl's dream come true, being a doll clothes designer.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at your Instagram account here, Amy. So this was an example of a great influencer campaign where you had also some social good, some charity work you were doing with it.
Absolutely. Bake for Good was an initiative that King Arthur Flour launched this spring, where we were really putting out a call to action to our customers to use baking as a way to have a positive impact in their communities. And so the way that we kicked off this initiative was with a thing that we called the Bake for Good Tour. We pulled together food writers and bloggers in 3 cities across the US and taught them how to bake breads and pies, and actually took those breads and pies that they made on the first day with some of our bakers from the Baking Education Center at King Arthur, and actually prepared a full meal in a homeless shelter. So to kind of create that experience and see how motivating and moving baking for good can really be in action, and it actually gave them some really rich content to write about. So as part of this, we really focused on user-generated content through Instagram to create awareness, and throughout that week-long campaign, we actually did a takeover of the account. So all of our Instagram content was focused strictly on Bake for Good content. This was a great way to get awareness for the campaign among our fans, but also to leverage the influencers that we were pulling into the campaign as well. So by featuring these posts, it's definitely indicates that there's a broader level of engagement. It also takes some of the pressure off of a brand where content creation on all of these platforms can often be a challenge. So this is a great way to kind of incent those users to engage with you and also take off the pressure on yourself.
So at Marketing Sherpa, we found that influencer outreach is the most effective social media tactic. It's also the most difficult. So was a philanthropic angle to this? Did that help you with the influencer outreach and getting some of these influencers engaged?
Absolutely. This was, the philanthropic angle was probably the most compelling component of this campaign for some of the bigger bloggers that joined us. You know, influencers are getting approached by brands nonstop, and so it's kind of becoming a dime a dozen, and it's hard to compete with that. You really need to come at it from a unique angle that is really fitting to your brand, and for us this really resonates with our customers and who we are as a brand in terms of our identity and what we care about as a company. So this was a perfect fit, both for us and for the people that had joined us on the tour. It was a really motivating experience.
So any overarching do's and don'ts for using Instagram for the internet retailers out there? I know it's hard to paint it in broad brushstrokes, but what are some things they should definitely do, some things they definitely shouldn't on Instagram?
Yeah, I would say a big do is if you're going to get into it, do it properly. I mean, the biggest mistake is, you know, you have a random collection of whatever pictures with, you know, 17 followers, and it just looks like you don't know what you're doing. So almost any strategy is better than no strategy. But, you know, the behind the scenes look strategy is fine. You know, I don't think followers want to see product shots all day long. So you've got to be creative with your, you know, photography. But that's the biggest one is, you know, if you're going to do it right, figure out a strategy that makes sense. Obviously, if you can add value to your followers and something that's meaningful to them, they'll like it and engage with it. If it's just straight product shots, they probably won't. So you've got to find that balance, you know. And 80-20, you know, maybe 80% behind the scenes or the team or, you know, your corporate dog or whatever. And then, you know, because people love that stuff. And then 20%, hey, new product, you know.
So some people are cat people, though.
That's true.
I see you nodding along, Amy.
I think it's important to, if you're focusing on Instagram specifically, it's important to identify what is different about your Instagram presence than your presence on Facebook or Pinterest or any other social media marketing platform. How are you going to make that different, and why are people going to want to engage with you through that channel? So absolutely, like the behind the scenes approach is really compelling to people, especially people who are really interested in you as a brand. I'd say that in terms of like establishing an effective presence there, absolutely you need to stay consistent. You need to commit to being there in an authentic way and post consistently, because people will respond to that. If you, as Jason mentioned, like put up a few pictures and abandon it, it really reflects poorly on you as a brand. And we had several questions after our presentation from people saying, okay, we're looking at establishing a presence across these, you know, visual content platforms. Where do we start? Well, start first of all where your customers are, but don't feel compelled to establish a presence across every single platform just because you think you should. Commit to one and make it work for you, and then expand from there.
Let's take another look at another platform. This is your Pinterest platform, and you were mentioning that as a lot of marketers face a challenge creating content, always being able to fill all these challenges with content. And so you use some of the Pinterest content in email. Can you tell us a little bit about how you chose the creative and the messaging and also the results you saw?
Totally. So, yeah, this was one example of an Easter email that we sent this April. We often use popular Pinterest imagery to inform images that we use in different channels. This wasn't actually the case with this email. These were some new recipes that we had developed to highlight in our mail order catalog, but really this was just kind of layering in Pinterest functionality to a content email, providing people with great Easter recipes and then giving them an opportunity to hold on to those recipes. So I think that it's not something that we do right now as consistently as I'd like. I'd like to kind of make Pinterest and pin it capabilities in email the norm, but it's definitely something that worked. And when you look at the click-through rate on this email at 33%, that's strong. And I think that when you break it down, a substantial portion of that probably went to those pins. And in terms of actually getting your content to spread through Pinterest, this is a great way to do it, especially because you're starting with your own audience. the bulk of your presence on Pinterest as a brand will come from people pinning your content. That happens obviously primarily through your website, but in terms of leveraging other channels like email and other social media channels where you're active, there's absolutely a lot of opportunity there that you should be taking advantage of.
To drive people to pin it.
Totally.
Yeah, it sounds like you're using Pinterest as a kind of focus group for your marketing as well, seeing what's most popular with for your audience.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like, that's what Pinterest is all about, is viral and popular content. And as content marketers, it's your job to identify the most relevant content that you can and surface that to your customers. So I think that Pinterest is a great proving ground for imagery and content to see what resonates, and then use that in other places. Absolutely use that to inform your marketing.
So you're also using Pinterest with Facebook, and you said Pinterest with Facebook has been more effective for you than Instagram with Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a real connection here. So you're able to, we do this pretty consistently on Facebook, is to provide, if we're featuring a recipe, and recipe content is really core for our Facebook presence. So if we're featuring a recipe, we'll often link directly to the recipe on our website, but then also to the pin it button, or directly into the pin on one of our boards. And it's a great way to increase the repins. So the example that we used in the presentation was these inside out pumpkin muffins. We got almost 1,500 repins on this pin, most of that generated through that Facebook post. It's also just a great way to create awareness around your Pinterest presence. And I'm a big proponent of getting your customers to follow you on as many platforms as possible. So you're increasing those touch points, you're increasing the likelihood that you're going to reach those customers as consistently as possible. And so absolutely, I think that tying these platforms together is really important.
And Jason, you're on Pinterest too.
For sure.
So how do you use Pinterest similarly and maybe differently than you use Instagram?
Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, you know, in our view, Instagram was really, for us, it was our first foray into mobile, you know, in some ways. I mean, it was all about mobile marketing for us in some ways. So, you know, Pinterest for us has been a huge deal. Our website worked well, you know, and we didn't, you know, back in the beginning, 2011 in June, we didn't know what Pinterest was until we started seeing it pop up in our analytics, like a lot of companies, and then found out, you know, what is this? And so our website worked well. You know, lots of visual imagery that our, you know, fans and followers liked, and we've just continued to go with it. Obviously, when you set up your own profile, that helps tremendously. The biggest piece of advice I always say to people is, start with an audit of your own website. If you're not really sure what Pinterest can do for you or not, just make sure your website is working well for people who care about Pinterest, and you'll start to see some traffic from it. It's surprising to me how many companies still don't have a website that is Pinterest friendly. And it's just a huge error at this point. Pinterest is the 4th largest source of traffic online, according to the research I've seen. Direct typing, Google search, and Facebook are the top 3, and then Pinterest. So it's just a huge opportunity for anybody that's in sort of, you know, a retail visual space.
So you nodding along, Amy? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, totally. It's critical to have, I mean, social sharing buttons on your website in general. I think it's important to provide options because people gravitate toward different platforms, but like Pinterest definitely rises above the rest when it comes to social sharing for images specifically. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking to start establishing a presence on Pinterest, that's the #1 place to start, is to integrate that with your website and optimize it. We've had some issues with our pin it button and definitely seen the impact that it can have in a negative way on referral traffic. So just if you think of the upside of that, optimizing that button on your website can really have a positive impact.
Definitely. Well, thank you. You two collaborated today with a great session at IRC. And may I suggest another collaboration could be a cooking apron for dolls with King Arthur the Flower.
Ooh, I like it.
Yes, I can see that.
Can she replicate the logo?
Well,
I like it.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jason. And Jason, did you want to mention your books real quick?
Instagram Power is out right now, and Pinterest Power is out as well. So those are with McGraw-Hill. They're available in bookstores and on Amazon, of course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for watching. Hopefully you got a lot of great visual social media tips. And for more tips and techniques from IRCE, please visit marketingsherpa.com/IRCE.